I have a question for you. If you could go back in time to one day in your life and relive one single moment, what would it be?
I want this to be documented while I'm still with it, while I can still talk to him for myself. I love my life and my kids too much for this. I don't want to go home to them.
February 2021, I had my second Moderna shot. 36 hours afterwards, nausea, vomiting, and the days after that, worsening of shortness of breath. 5 days exactly after my Moderna shot, hospitalized for respiratory failure, and exactly 1 week later, placed on the ventilator. During this first hospital stay from February to March, I was placed on and off the vent 3 different times, would get better, and then cycle back to needing the support of a ventilator to breathe. After being life-flighted to a larger hospital, I slowly started to improve and came off the vent and was able to go home in March 2021, but this was only the beginning of a medical roller coaster ride. After 3 days of being home, I was life-flighted again to a larger hospital where I was admitted for blood clots, placed on blood thinners, and treated for respiratory symptoms. During this hospital stay, I did celebrate my birthday, which was a high moment, and I thought things were looking up as I was able to go home. But once again, this was short-lived as I started to get sick, having nausea, vomiting, and abdominal distension. Then I started having bleeding and had a fall, and for a 4th time I had to be life-flighted to a larger hospital and had an EGD and a colonoscopy to find a GI bleed and back on the vent for the 4th time afterwards. During this 4th intubation, they determined I was having vocal cord dysfunction and may be causing some of the respiratory issues. I got to the point where they were able to send me home, but started to develop more issues like tongue fasciculation, hair loss. During March and April, started to have fluctuations in my heart rate and blood pressure, going from one extreme to the other, as well as swelling and continued abdominal distension. Breathing continued to worsen, which led to another hospitalization and the 4th life flight, and ended up on the vent for the 5th time. I just know that I'm tired. I'm tired sometimes, and sometimes I just feel like I want to break down. But I know I've got kiddos at home. I'm going to work my butt off and do whatever is physically possibly inside of me to get back to the life of somewhat normal. Because that's all I can do until I know exactly what is possible with whatever's going on that's causing this.
19 months ago. This is one of the ones that started to occur. My throat would close off and I would have laryngeal spasms. They can't find a diagnosis. But the only thing that started all this cascade of problems and multiple systems to go wrong started a couple days after my second vaccine. Because I have laryngeal spasms, even though they don't occur all the time, they happen randomly, and when they happen, I can't get any air up. This is only after it's loosened up some. So if I didn't have the trach, I wouldn't be able to breathe.
At the beginning of 2022, I decided I'd had enough with the traditional medical system and began to search out doctors that would help with COVID vaccine injury, and I became a patient of Dr. Corey and Dr. Ely. Through detoxing and being on the COVID vaccine injury protocol, April through July of 2022, things started to really improve. This gave me a new purpose, a new mission. Not only was I fighting for a voice myself, but I wanted to fight for awareness and the voice of so many others.
This small town girl from rural Tennessee is not giving up. I will not be silenced. I will not be ignored. I will not comply. I will not back down. From Los Angeles, California to Washington, D.C., hear my story and hear our plea.
I was not rare. I was one of thousands of people affected, and my story was not going to end here. I was determined together we would not be silenced, and we would be a voice they respiratory issues and had multiple stints of pneumonia that led to sepsis and ended up back in the hospital multiple times. In this time, I was also having more urinary issues, in which they implanted a suprapubic catheter in my abdomen, an NG tube placed as I was having more food intolerance due to gastroparesis symptoms. I developed more weakness and regressed back from walking with a crutch to having to use my wheelchair most of the time. In hopes of helping regain normal urinary function, they implanted a bladder InterStim device, which has helped some. However, I continue to have the suprapubic catheter to drain what I retain. They have also progressed from an NG tube to now placed a PEG tube, which is a G tube, where I receive my feedings for nutritional support. The beginning of 2023 continued to be rough with a hospitalization and some accidents from falls due to balance, mobility, and neuropathy issues. However, I found out about a neurologist that the React 19 Care Fund helped fund my trip to go see. Through the neurologist's evaluation and testing, I was diagnosed with CIDP, chronic inflammatory demyelinating polyneuropathy, and POTS. After the vaccine, my body went into a hyperinflammatory response and started to attack itself, including the nerves and the autonomic nervous system, affecting all the systems in my body and the mobility, attacking the protective layer and the nerves, causing damage. He recommended that I started intravenous immunoglobulin, IVIG, and had infusions to help decrease this inflammatory response and stop my body from attacking itself and allow the nerves to repair. Due to poor IV access, I had a subcutaneous port implanted, and since then have continued to receive every 3-week infusions. Also during this time, I joined with a few other vaccine injured and a law firm, and we are currently in a lawsuit suing Biden and his administration for violating our First Amendment rights with censorship through social media platforms. I also had the opportunity to go with React 19 to Washington, D.C. and lobby for legislation that would help vaccine injured. 2023 continued with improvements, especially after starting IVIG. I had improvements in mobility, decreased pain and neuropathy. My blood pressure and heart rate have lowered and been more controlled. I was able to get my feeding tube out and now tolerate food. I've noticed improvements in energy as well as decreased atrophy and now able to build up muscle and more motor control with working out, and have recently started even wheelchair basketball, which has been very challenging but great workout that I've truly missed. This has definitely been challenging. However, it has helped mentally and physically, and my endurance continues to improve. It's been 6 months and I've had 9 IVIG treatments, and I continue to improve. And the latest good news I received is
it is set on April 30th of this year that I will become decannulated, aka my trach stoma stent will be removed. He said this is contingent on no more laryngospasms, throat closure, and she would do this. However, I just understand the risk that she can't guarantee that they won't occur again, so it is a risk factor, and as I get closer I'll be weighing those out just to make sure that I'm at that point. But she said if I were to ever have any more, then I would have to be trached again. There may be some Botox options, but if it was causing breathing issues, then I would have to do a trach, and hopefully in an emergency situation I would be able to get where I needed to and ventilated, so to keep that airway. But my goal is that hopefully no more occur until April, and I can have this because it'll be a year without having one, and hopefully these are a thing of my past and history, and I can say sayonara to this bittersweet friend of mine.
despite the ups and downs, I continue to speak out for myself and for all the others who have been silenced, that have lost loved ones and been injured to this vaccine.
Hospital, and exactly a week later was on the ventilator for the first time due to respiratory. And then there was a whirlwind of events.
today, February 12th, 2021. 36 hours after my second Moderna vaccine is when all of this started. In the past 3 years, I've had to be hospitalized 11 times. I have been life-flighted 7 times. I had to be placed on life support in the ventilator 6 different times. I went from 3 diagnoses to over 20 diagnoses. I have been taking medications over 25 at a time, to trying over 30 different supplements, nutritional things, alternative therapies like hyperbaric, red light, detoxing, cellular health, lifestyle change, exercise. I have spent a month in physical therapy rehabilitation inpatient facility. I've spent months in home health and outpatient physical therapy. I've spent 6 months in outpatient cardiopulmonary rehab. I've had 7 different surgeries requiring anesthesia and multiple procedures, things like my tracheostomy, suprapubic catheter implanted twice, feeding tube through NG and G tube, had a bladder stimulator implanted, a subcutaneous port implanted, tracheostomy revision, and I've recently started IVIG. So things have been up and down the past 3 years, but the last 6 months things have been drastically improving since this latest thing of starting IVIG. And I don't know where my plateau will be, but my hope and prayer is that I continue to improve. Every improvement, no matter how small, is a blessing, and I choose to focus on that because the frustration, the anger, the sadness, the depression that has come through this whole thing has been a whole nother catastrophic injury. Dealing with it, you literally have to grieve the life you used to have and you lost. Learning to accept and adapt to what you have and make the most of it. These past 3 years have been hell, to say the least, and I didn't expect to still see myself struggling when all this started. But despite where I may not be, I'm not where I was. And so hopefully as time continues, things will look a lot different for me. But no matter what, my story doesn't end here, and neither does yours. So, no, you're not alone.